Yokosuka, just 90 minutes from Tokyo, is home to the US Navy's only forward-deployed aircraft carrier. It's the only one based outside US territory. That and the US Navy's 7th Fleet have been here since the Second World War. Why on earth are they still here? And more to the point, when those thousands of sailors come ashore and want to party, what kind of trouble do they get into? Well, actually, the mingling of cultures here in Yokosuka goes for a really unique and fun nightlife scene, one you're going to want to visit. But there are a few things we better warn you about. So this is Yokosuka, a small seaside city about 90-minute drive from Tokyo. When you say Yokosuka, everyone immediately thinks of the huge US Navy base that it hosts. Now, it's a small city like many other Japanese cities, probably only about 10 minutes from the station down to the Navy base. And this drag with all these shops and people walking around slowly is about all there is to it. People going about their business, getting their daily groceries, maybe doing a bit of pachinko in the afternoon. It all seems totally normal until evening comes, when thousands of sailors and base workers could come off base to party, and that's when the trouble starts.
95, 3 U.S. personnel kidnapped and raped a 12-year-old girl.
No base!
So in that horrible incident in 1995 in Okinawa, 3 US military personnel dragged a 12-year-old schoolgirl into the back of a van and gang raped her. There were massive outrage and protests in Japan. And what was doubly insulting for the Japanese was not just the appalling nature of the incident itself, it was the fact that due to the status of forces agreement between the US military and the Japanese government, the US military wasn't even required to hand over the 3 suspects to the Japanese police for questioning until indictment. This caused a big incident between the Japanese government and US government, and they changed the law so that from that time forth, there was a more equal relationship whereby the Japanese police did have jurisdiction over US military personnel based here in Japan.
All the men you have to be.
The demonstration was called after a former US Marine was arrested in connection with the rape and murder of 20-year-old Irina Shimabukuro.
After the arrest of a base employee who admitted to raping and killing a local woman. Now, her body was found near the base.
Another case involving sexual assault, this time on Christmas Eve.
There's a huge anti-U.S. military protest today. Tens of thousands came out to protest the U.S. military in Okinawa.
Sparking anger over the presence of U.S. military bases.
Also this year, a sailor pled guilty to rape, and another sailor was arrested for drunk driving after injuring 2 people.
And since that time, whenever there was an accusation of rape by a Japanese woman against US military personnel, our desk would send us rushing down to the relevant US base to film around the base. And this created the impression that there was a recurring problem of US military personnel preying on local Japanese women.
Tens of thousands taking part in demonstrations.
And everyone here thinks US Marines are evil.
I can never forgive such incidents. I learned that in the past 30 years, nearly 30 cases of sexual violence have occurred.
U.S. military officials tell us they too are outraged by the recent crimes. After the death of the 20-year-old, they instituted a 30-day mourning period, banning drinking off base and imposing a midnight curfew.
Obviously there was a problem, but actually when an investigative reporter at the AP looked into the numbers, it turned out that the instance of rape amongst the normal Japanese population and the instance rate of rape amongst US personnel was much higher than the instance of rape between US personnel and Japanese people. It was relatively rare that US military personnel attacked Japanese women compared to anywhere else in society, terrible though it is. But despite all this, it's obvious that most Japanese have a very strong affection for America. Japanese, of course, they like NBA, they like baseball, they like hip hop. But Also, they come to Yokosuka especially to buy this kind of merchandise that's on sale in shops here. You know, these t-shirts with American logos, you know, knickknacks from the US military. These jackets, special jackets, were created by GIs. Sukajan, which is Japanese English for souvenir jackets, actually became a collector's item. Some celebrities come all the way from America just to buy these jackets in Yokosuka. When the US bases have open days, tens of thousands of Japanese come on the bases willingly, not just to see the hardware, the planes and the ships, although they love that too, but just to hang out with GIs and get a sense of the space and freedom of America. They have a bit of America on their doorstep, and they're lucky to have this chance to have a connection with a country that most Japanese people really adore. Well, of course, Japanese people don't just come to the area around Yokosuka to buy souvenirs, Americana. There's also the opportunity to meet Americans, and there is the opportunity for Japanese women mostly who have a dream of meeting American men, possibly forming a relationship that will take them to the USA to live the American dream. There's an opportunity here, and certainly many of the US GIs are interested in meeting Japanese women. In fact, after World War II, when it was not really considered acceptable to mix the races, the Japanese government got involved in organizing the entertainment for GIs in the form of hostess bars and the like, probably because they wanted to keep them away from the normal Japanese population. There was a word for women who worked in these bars, Ameko, which really means like American girl, and a sort of derogatory term. It continues to this day. But now that mixed marriages are perfectly acceptable, of course, lots of Japanese women come here, meet GIs, get married and live happily ever after. But as you can imagine, with the cultural differences and the strange way of meeting, a lot of things can go very wrong. Here on the outskirts of Yokosuka, you get Japanese love hotels like here, and the couple might end up in a short stay in a hotel like this, and it might be the first of many dates that lead to a real relationship. And it might go on for weeks and months. But with US military personnel, there's a deadline. At some point, they're going to be sent to another base overseas, and then a young man on a very low income has to make a difficult decision. Does he want to continue with the commitments he's made with a Japanese woman here who's possibly pregnant and had children, or does he just want to lift off to that carefree future in another country?
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of all who threaten it.
When I was a journalist, I covered American woman who had a law practice here that specialized in chasing up these deadbeat dads in America to get alimony for the wives and children they left behind in Japan. Sadly, it's something that happens quite often. So it's Friday night in Yokosuka, and just to give you an idea of how close everything is to each other here, those gates over there are the gates into the US Navy base. And just a block over there are 2 streets full of bars for your R&R. Here you have the nightlife. There's lots of bars, lots of people pouring out of the base to have a good time. And as you can see, it looks a lot more like America than Japan. You know, there's bars and there's military police here to make sure there's no trouble. They're looking for trouble, and before the night's out, they'll probably find some. So these are the kind of bars you go to around the base. Everyone's having fun, mixing, but anyone can get in trouble. Even the US GIs can get in trouble because there are shakedowns by people who are taking advantage of their reputation. I was in a bar like this with two friends once. We were drinking, talking to girls, and as we left, a Japanese girl came out and accused my friend of pulling her arm. Big deal, but she called the police. The Japanese police immediately took her side because she was Japanese, and it felt like we were in big trouble. Now, when the police were talking to us, she went round the edge, went to my friend and said, "Pay me 20,000 yen, $200, and I'll drop it all." What was this? It was a shakedown. She's taking advantage of the reputation of US military. She thought we were past curfew, and if she accused us of a sexual impropriety, if you were a US serviceman, you're in such big trouble. And this is the kind of thing that happens. So sometimes the temptations of the night can prove a sailor's downfall. Way back in nightclubbing days, I had friends who bought pills from dealers, and one of the dealers was an ex-sailor. In fact, he was still a sailor, but he was absent without leave from this base right here. He liked clubbing, and he started dealing pills to his friends. He got a local supply. He was making money, and he had a Japanese girlfriend, and everything was good. One day, he had to be back on base by a midnight curfew because his ship was leaving on mission. And at the time, he thought, I've got my girlfriend. I can stay at her place in Tokyo. I've got my business. I'm a self-made man here. I don't need the US Navy. I ain't going back. My future's here. And he did that. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Imagine how that guy felt when he wakes up the next morning and he remembers the ship has already sailed and he can never come back here, Yokosuka base, where he was working. And imagine how his Japanese girlfriend felt when she realized their dreams of going back to America are shattered. And not only that, she's got an illegal alien and a drugs dealer living in her small Tokyo apartment. What do the military police do in this situation? It's not what you think. They contact the guy and say, "Don't worry, we're not here to arrest you. We're just going to tell you your options. Either you come with us now and yes, you'll be discharged from the military. Yes, you'll go to jail, but you'll get some kind of leniency for your cooperation. Or you could ignore us, which is your right. We'll cancel your SOPA visa. We'll tell the Japanese police where you are. They'll come and arrest you. You'll spend months in a Japanese jail, be deported to us, spend time in our jail, and then get the worst discharge from the military possible." So what did the guy do? He was seen in a nightclub for 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, still selling drugs. But apparently the Japanese gangster who supplied him, they were not happy to have him around as full-time competition. And he took the easy way out, or the least awful way out, and handed himself in. So if you want to see the size of the US and Japanese fleets at Yokosuka, the only way to see it is from this boat tour that leaves hourly from the pier. You'll be surprised at the scale of the armed forces on show. But one tip is come early, because there's a long line of amateur Japanese photographers and possibly the odd Chinese spy. So despite all the annoyances and social problems, at the end of the day, the important thing is that the raw naval power of the US. 20 years ago, there was a sense that Japan might outgrow the need of the US military, but China has since grown in a way that nobody imagined. And for all their problems, the USA and Japan have one thing in common. They value their freedom above anything else, and they're working together to overcome any social problems or difficulties with US personnel being based here, because they know what's important. If you like what we're doing, like and subscribe, and tell us what else to cover.